PCF, this coming Sunday, we're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to share the Lord's Supper while we are scattered across this region rather than gathered in our building. So after the sermon on Facebook Live, I will lead us in observing communion. There's going to be something about this that will probably feel less than fully satisfactory. And that's for a good reason. It's because communion is meant to express the unity of God's people as they share together in each other's physical presence from the same communion elements, the bread and cup. And we're not going to be in each other's physical presence. We won't be sharing those same communion elements. And that means it's going to feel different and it's going to feel less satisfactory in that respect. But I don't think that's a reason not to do it. Instead, here's what I'm hoping for. As we observe the Lord's Supper this way, physically scattered, I'm hoping it's going to stir us to long and to pray even more that we'll be able to observe it again the way it's really meant to be observed as soon as possible, physically gathered. And it strikes me that communion itself really is a picture of our longing in this life for the future end time banquet yet to come. So there is built into communion itself a kind of longing for something more. So when we observe communion, we eat these tiny little bits of bread, we drink these tiny little cups of juice, these little sips of juice, and that reminds us that the real full lavish banquet isn't here yet. It's coming. It's in the new creation. So there is in observing communion a sort of built-in longing already. And I hope that in this way of practicing communion scattered, there's going to be that same dynamic of longing. Let's have it united in one another's physical presence with the common elements as soon as we possibly can, as soon as God allows us to come back together in person in our church building. So I want to ask you to do three things as we prepare for communion on Sunday. Number one, please have some bread and juice available at your home for Sunday morning. If you don't have juice, use water. Number two, please don't be distracted by whatever type of bread or juice you're using. So it's not silly to take communion with a bit of English muffin or bagel or whatever. It's not silly. On the contrary, it is awesome and it's serious. So don't be tempted to make light of this solemn, joyful meal, even if it feels a little bit different. We're going to treat it as seriously as we do whenever we're gathered. And then third, please prepare yourself spiritually for communion on Sunday, just like you normally do. Pray beforehand, confess sin, ask God to remind you of the beauty and preciousness of the gospel. I pray there will be something particularly meaningful and stirring and sweet about sharing in this meal together, even when we are in this season necessarily scattered and physically separated from one another. So please join me in praying that God will use communion this Sunday in addition to the preaching of his word for the good of us, his people.